Leadership. Their success determines your leadership ability. Woo! Man, that's difficult. In other words, your success depends on somebody else. It does in the quality of leadership. If your organization is not successful and you're in charge of an organization, it's not their fault, it's your fault. You got to change the way you're leading. And that's difficult to do sometimes. The story today is one that you've heard before, but you can't hear it enough, let me guarantee you. 6 men were trapped by circumstances in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story's told. Each one has a chance to be a leader, positive or negative. They've got a problem in front of them. It is freezing cold. There's a fire, and each one of them got a stick of wood, so they have a chance to keep that fire burning, to be successful. They can keep that log and be unsuccessful. The dying fire in need of logs, the first man held his back because of faces around the fire. He noticed one was black. Now tell me what kind of leader that guy is. He is allowing his prejudice against the color of another person's skin to prevent him from being a positive leader. He is so prejudiced that he's not going to put in his stick of wood. The second man sat and saw not one of his local church, couldn't bring himself to give the first his stick of birch. He's not a leader. He's not a positive leader because he sees in the group of 6 a person that's not in his church. So because of a religious difference, he's willing to die. The poor man sat in tattered clothes and gave his coat a hitch. Why should he give up his log to warm the idle rich? That guy over there is rich. I have no reason to put in my stick of wood so he can get warm. What kind of leadership is that? You're starting to understand one of the great qualities of leadership is sacrifice. You got to sacrifice your ego to be a leader. Sometimes you got to take a back seat to be a leader. The rich man sat and thought of all the wealth he had in store. How could he keep his wealth from the lazy, shiftless poor? He wasn't going to throw in his stick, and the poor guy was probably on welfare, and he wasn't going to help him. The black man's face spoke revenge, and the fire passed from his sight because he saw in his stick of wood a chance to spite the white. What's America today? The blacks are fighting, the whites are fighting, the blacks are fighting, the browns are fighting, the greens are fighting, the yellows are fighting, the blues. You got a blue state and you got a red state. You got all these different, and the red state won't give because they don't want the blue state to gain anything. That's leadership. We're looking at people that are supposed to be our leaders, and they're voting for bills because the rest of the people in their party are voting for bills. Positive leadership? I don't think so. The last man of this forlorn group didn't opt for gain. Only those who could help him did he play the game. If you don't get anything from somebody, I'm not going to do it for you. What I say that the first part of leadership, positive leadership, is sacrifice. You see, their logs held tight in death's still hands as proof of human sin. He didn't die from the cold without. He died from the cold within. Now, here's the number one question that poem brings up. What if the first person had thrown in his stick of wood? What do you think the others would have done? Well, let me tell you something. If you're going to be a great leader, you're going to have to throw in a stick of wood. You're going to have to give up your ego sometimes. You may have to give up your place in line sometimes. To be a great leader, sometimes you got to take second best. You got to back off. I can remember my mom, who was such a great leader, and we went home when I was 30 years old, and she was eating a coconut pie, and she got the first slice. And several of us boys, we said, Mom, we didn't know you liked coconut pie. Well, when you were kids, it never was enough. You're not kids anymore. She was willing to give up the coconut pie to be a great leader. You know, what are you willing to give up to be a leader? That's what it gets down to. I heard a coach tell a story one time that I thought was so inspiring as far as being a leader. He had a player that was a real difficult player, had a really bad attitude. And he didn't seem to be able to change him. He ran him, he disciplined, he punished, he did everything he could. And he finally called him in and he said his name, and he said, I want to apologize to you. I don't know what I've done to make you so competitive with me, but I know it's something that I've done, and I really want to apologize because you're not nearly the player you could be, and it's my fault. And if you'll tell me what I've done, I promise you I'll get better. And he said that the player broke down and tears came to his eyes, and he said, Coach, it ain't nothing you've done. It's just me. And I've always tried to be the one that's not going to listen, the one that's always going to compete with you and be better than you. It's not you, it's me. And he said from that day forward, that kid was the best leader he had. Now think about what it took for that coach, who was the head coach, and he was a very successful head coach. And he had to sit there with that kid and apologize to him. You think he threw in his stick of wood? Yeah. But who won? The fire took on a blaze. Sometimes you got to throw in that stick of wood if you're going to be a great leader. You got to give up something in order to get something. And when you do that, you become the best you that you can